Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. As always, I'm Alec Cabrera. That's Mike Wolfgang. The banner took an extra minute to show up, but here's the show. A new week, 1st of August. And Mike, that means less than a month till football starts.
Oh, we're under a month for
That's
some
time of the
schools.
year, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. High school is a month away. Less than that. 18th, I think, is the first Thursday kickoff. Ursuline versus Brookfield. That stand ball, that Thursday night game should be a good one. I'm going to be tuning into that one on YSN when that comes up. As everyone knows, Matt and I cover the Brookfield Warriors for the football season, along with Valley Christian. So hoping for good years out of both of those. But Mike, then you also got NFL preseason. It starts in 11 days. Is the first preseason game.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem real, right?
By the way, who's in that game this year? Hall of Fame game.
Ooh, who's the Hall of Fame game this year?
That's usually the first preseason game. I haven't even checked who's in it.
No, I haven't. Raiders and the Jaguars will be actually, get this, in 3 days. August 4th is the Hall of Fame game.
I didn't even know that.
So it's this week, right? I'm here getting ready like, college football doesn't start till the end of the month. High school's, second half of the month. And here we are already in, NFL season. Their training camps are going strong. We've seen a lot of videos. Aaron Donald choke holding one of his other linemen. An odd video that showed up. Not sure what the training part of it was, but it's something that's being done at the Rams training camp. And can we really say anything against what Aaron Donald's doing to train because it's working?
Absolutely not. Let him do whatever he wants. If it looks weird, whatever, it works. That dude's a beast.
Right. Yeah, no, an absolute monster. But obviously, biggest news we got in the NFL going on today is that the ruling was put out there for Deshaun Watson. Right now, it's being recommended a 6-game suspension per, what was her name? Sue Robinson, I believe. Sue L. Robinson. Yeah. Former federal judge, released report. She's going with a 6-game suspension. That will be the suspension unless the NFL or NFLPA vote to kind of
appeal it.
Oh man, my brain just appeal. That's the word. Yeah. Unless the NFLPA or NFL votes to appeal it. But the NFLPA said yesterday that whatever the ruling is, they will not appeal, and they were urging the league to do the same. And the league's kind of forced into a situation right now where they have to not appeal it. They can't really afford to appeal it because then the NFLPA can go and sue the NFL for not operating under good faith of the currently agreed upon CBAs. So NFL's kind of in a trap here if they were to try and go anything against it. So likelihood is they will keep it as a 6-game suspension, and NFL won't look to appeal. They have 3 days to do so. So by that time of that Hall of Fame game on Thursday? Yep. On Thursday, we'll know for certain that Deshaun Watson is out for 6 games. So, Mike, we can finally speculate on the Browns and their upcoming season because this was the big looming question we've had on the show for the last couple of weeks. Who was going to be the starter day one? Was Deshaun Watson going to have that job? Or is he going to be able to? And the answer finally is going to be a no on that. So he's done first 6 games of the regular season. Obviously, I don't think we'll see him in the preseason. Then he's suspended until that week 7 of the year. So that kind of leaves a hole, though, as who the starter is going to be for Cleveland day one. Obviously, Josh Rosen was brought in, Jacoby Brissett. Who's the one former backup from the Steelers?
Josh Dobbs.
Josh Dobbs is in that room as well. So I think a lot of questions, but I think the obvious one should be Jacoby Brissett. Has played time, has had a lot of time as a starter here in the NFL, mainly with the Indianapolis Colts. And I must say, from Jacoby, from the limited time that he played with the Colts, I liked what I saw out of him. I thought he was going to be their guy. He played 4 seasons, and the 2 that he had chances to start in 2017 and 2019. Had a QB rating in the 2017 season of 81, had a touchdown to interception ratio of nearly 2-1. He had 13 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. They've been a run-oriented offense with no wide receivers. He had 13 touchdowns, but 3,000 yards passing. Had almost 3,000 yards passing in 2019 as well, and had a 3-1 touchdown to interception ratio with a QBR of 88. 2021, he took over for Tua Tagovailoa when he went down injured. Had a completion percentage of 62.7%. 1,200 yards, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, QBR of 78.1. So his numbers, they're fairly consistent. His touchdown interception ratio is kind of all over the place. You don't know exactly what you're going to get there, but you're going to get a pretty accurate quarterback. I mean, to see a guy you're pretty much guaranteed to see 60% completion from, that's kind of what you're looking for in the NFL. So that seems like the go-to, in my opinion. I mean, you got Josh Rosen, who obviously taken in that same draft as Baker, but hasn't played in what years at this point? He's been on backup, so it's not like he hasn't been doing anything or taking reps, but he hasn't started a game since 2019 when he was in there for Miami, and he didn't really do that much for him. So he was 0-3 in the 3 games. Had a 53% completion, 567 yards, 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions. He played a couple games for Atlanta last season. He was in 4 games, not as the starter. Went 2 of 11, 18.2 as his completion percentage, just 19 yards and 2 interceptions. So Josh Rosen, not the likely candidate here. And then Josh Dobbs, of course, I don't think he was brought in necessarily to start. I think he's more coming in to bring a culture about a quarterback room that doesn't really have one. I think when you look at a guy like Dobbs, he's kind of content to be one of those backup guys. We've seen him on the Steelers. He fit into a good system over there, and there hasn't been many problems out of that system the last couple of years. So I think Josh Dobbs might be just more of a locker room presence than a quarterback
type of guy. Yes,
right. Yeah, I got a feeling that's what they're going with. Has never started a game at quarterback in his career. He is 10 of 17 for 45 yards and an interception. Somehow this dude is maintaining a spot in the NFL. Yeah. I mean, he's been given basically no opportunities, but he's sitting there taking in millions of dollars. I mean, can you really say that he's not the smartest guy in football right now?
I tell people all the time, if I got paid in any sport to just sit on the bench, obviously if I get in that position I want to play, but as if I'm talking right now, for me, I'd take it in a heartbeat.
Hanging out with mega millionaires. Yep. Being a mega millionaire yourself, not as much as those guys, but you're there.
You'd be on the field to watch the game.
Front row seat to every game.
Yeah.
Or I guess no seat, but you got a front row view to every single game. You're in the huddles. You get to hear the calls before they happen. I mean, obviously, there's a ton of hard work that goes into it as well. I mean, it's not just like he's sitting there scratching his rear end, like an outfielder in T-ball.
He's not sitting there hanging out.
Right. I mean, he's putting in work, but it seems the obvious move to me here is Jacoby Brissett. Would you agree with that, Mike?
I'd say so. And I'll go from quickly on the suspension part, and then I'll kind of move into the football thing. I haven't been following this too much, to be honest. I kind of did at the beginning, but as things have kind of gotten,
slowed down,
kind of gotten serious, things have been reduced, I guess, on Deshaun Watson's part. I haven't paid too much attention to it, but after hearing some people talk today, we're still going to see what happens the next few days. Like you said, with the NFL, they have a chance to appeal it. A lot of people are saying on Deshaun Watson's side of it, there's always going to be agreement and disagreement. On his side of things, they're saying a lot of his representatives are saying that 6 games, I think, is too much. They weren't expecting 6. I think it's too much. I think it needs to be reduced. A lot of people on the NFL side of things are saying, hey, they're not happy with 6 games. They thought it should have been more than that, maybe in a full season. So we'll see if they decide what they decide to do.
Mike, here's the thing with the NFL side of it. Initially, they wanted an indefinite suspension to put on Deshaun Watson. They didn't want to give him a chance to play again in the league until all of this other stuff got handled, and they were going to do like after so many games he can apply for reinstatement. But, as we've heard in the last couple of years with the NFLPA and the CBA, indefinite suspensions are illegal in terms of the CBA agreed upon between the Players Association and the league itself. We have seen the NFL put those kind of suspensions on, and it hasn't really caused too much turmoil because the PA kind of has to take a step back here. There's a lot of give and take between the league and the players union. But yeah, indefinite suspension was what the league wanted first. Go ahead.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with that. And it's from, I know a lot of people are upset. Again, I'm on the fence with things because I'm still weighing sides. I don't know a whole lot about it, but obviously I know the big picture, but like all the minor details. Again, we'll see what the NFL does, because over the last couple of years, the NFL's cracked down on anything that has anything to do with women. If you even lay a finger on them, they crack down on that. So I think a lot of people are, at least from what I've heard today, a lot of people are surprised it's only been 6 games from the. I know the NFL didn't put a suspension on it; was more so from the court. But again, we'll see what the NFL does if they leave it this way, because a lot of people are thinking the last couple of years they've been trying to say, "Hey, we're standing up for women's rights. If you do anything wrong, you got to face consequences." And I think that's what you're hearing from the NFL, is why people are saying they're not satisfied with 6 games. So we'll see what they do with appeal. They got till Thursday, like you said. That's all I got from the legal part of it, because I haven't been following too much. But
Mike, more on the legal side here.
Yeah.
Judge Robinson, she did address that in her conclusion statement that's already been released. You can, it's been retweeted on our Twitter page at Casual Sports Report. Everyone can go read that there, the full list. But one thing she said was the league has been trying to be proactive without setting a precedent and implementing rules in the first part. They've been cracking down on stuff without putting together a warning to players. It's kind of the way she put it. It's more of a legal aspect to it, not necessarily ethics. It's more of, they have to go legal on this part, because the situation at hand is there are ethical parts to it, but at the same time, it's a very legally confusing contract when you're trying to manage CBAs, court documents, and all of this other, business side of it. Everyone's talking the ethical side. Ethically, yeah, Deshaun Watson probably should be facing a harder suspension. But when you look at legal precedent that's been set already about this, Ezekiel Elliott had 1 accusation against him, suspended 6 games. Big Ben had 2, I believe, against him. And neither one of those had any criminal charges placed against. They both got 6 games. That's the precedent that was been set. That's what Robinson went along. This is the harshest penalty that has ever been put forward for an allegation without criminal charges, is 6 games. And no fine is a big part of this as well. One part of reinstation for Deshaun Watson is that his massages will only be done by club approved organizations within the team organization itself. So only Cleveland Brown massage therapists are allowed to do that for Deshaun Watson. So it kind of creates why are you putting this in if you don't think it was enough to suspend him all the way? A lot of legal problems involved along it, but that's the legal side of it. Now let's get into football side, because I think football is the more interesting part, and that's what people kind of care. That's what people are going to care about in 3 weeks. I think is the outcome of this. Everyone's talking the ethics of it now. Once we get down to football, it's going to come back to football. It always does.
I'll tell you what, people do this in every sport too. I'm sure about a good portion of the Browns fans are a little leery about it. I'm not saying they don't like Watson, but they're probably a little leery on the situation, especially, I don't want to get, I'm just going to straight up say it. Probably more portion of the Browns fans that are female probably don't support it, which is fine. I have no disagreement with that. That's how they feel. But, as soon as he comes back, maybe not that portion of it, but a lot of the Browns fans are going to be like, you know what? It's over with. He just threw a game when he touchdown pass. It's over. But that's just it's going to move on from that.
As soon as he throws that first touchdown pass, everyone's going to be wearing the number 4 jersey. That's the other side of this.
Well, and the thing of that, and the last thing before I get into the sports, because I got the schedule pulled up and I'm talk about that, the 6 games he's going to miss.
Yeah,
but
I got mine as well.
You're going to have that part of it. You're going to have people that are, everybody feels different about things. You're going to have people that when he comes back and plays, people are going to support it. Some people aren't. That's how it's going to be. And we've seen the people do that with Indians before they changed their name. People didn't like the name. They didn't show up. So that's just how it's going to be on that side of it. The Browns are going to figure that out part. And there's nothing you can really do. People make up their own minds. If they want to support it, they can. If they don't, that's on them. But The schedule part of it, I'm looking at their schedule, Alec. These 6 games, about half of them, I think, are winnable with if you go with Jacoby Brissett. The only ones that really have a chance at losing, it's always 50-50 with the Steelers, so I'll mark that as not an easy game. Then Chargers and Patriots. I mean, the first 2 games are definitely winnable.
Mike, the one thing with that, right? No, I mean, let's start game 1 here. I think when you look at the Panthers, obviously the big storyline, Baker Mayfield taking on his former team. Baker, we don't know if he's going to be the starter. He seems like, the guy that they wanted to bring in. I mean, you're not just bringing him in to sit on the bench behind Sam Darnold unless he absolutely tanks it in, training camps. But we haven't heard any of that. So the likelihood is Baker Mayfield's day 1 starter for the Panthers. We'll see how the preseason goes these next 3 weeks. Regular season starts September 11th for Cleveland. In that Panthers game, a couple different sides of this. Christian McCaffrey, what is Christian McCaffrey going to be this year?
Yeah.
Because he's coming back. He's 3rd favorite right now to win Comeback Player of the Year via, I believe, DraftKings betting odds so far. Derrick Henry's number 1 actually on that list. I think that's a pretty safe bet when you look around the league on who's coming back this season. He's number 1, obviously. But Panthers, they got a couple running backs I think they've been trying to work out. But Baker hasn't also been looking that great. So I think that's a very winnable game. Browns are still going to have Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward. The Browns have enough, I think, to compensate during these 6 games with Watson's absence. And Jacoby Brissett is a good enough quarterback, so long as he can avoid turnovers and game manage and just hand the ball off to Chubb. And that also falls back to Kevin Stefanski on not pulling a James Franklin and just you just need to hand the ball off because last season James Franklin didn't hand the ball off at all. This season, Browns got to make sure Nick Chubb's the focal point of this offense because you're going to have uncertainty especially once you get past these first 6 games and you get down to once Deshaun Watson's there. It might take him a moment to find this rhythm. This team will be, 7 games into the season when Deshaun Watson shows up. They're going to have a rhythm. They're going to be feeling a certain way. The game plan is going to be this, and then you're going to implement Watson, and it's going to change everything. So I think the biggest kind of flop along this schedule is going to be that Baltimore Ravens return October 23rd against the Ravens. It's on the road. I think the October 23rd game you looked at right now, that's a scheduled loss on the Browns season. I don't see a way they win that because that's the first game back with Watson. I think there's going to be too much. But then they have the next week. They go up against Cincinnati on Halloween. They get the primetime game as well. So week 2 back of Watson, primetime. That's the real start of the season for Cleveland Browns, I think, is that week 8. And everything before that, I mean, we're going to see what this team is made of outside of the quarterback position. We know they have good players. Now we get to see it all come together. But Panthers game, that should be a winnable game. Jets, give me that dub all day long. They're building. I still don't think the Jets are fully there yet. I think they need a couple more pieces. Mainly an offensive line. I think Zach Wilson's a good quarterback. Now he's got some wide receivers, especially Garrett Wilson, but rookie wide receivers, sometimes they take that first year to kind of get their feeling into the league and what's going on. So by week 2, I don't think Wilson will be settled in, and I don't think Zach Wilson, the quarterback, still has enough to work with, and the Jets still kind of don't have a great defense. So whatever goes on there, it happens. But week 3, Mike, I think this becomes the biggest game in the early part of the schedule for the Browns. They're going up against the Steelers. It's at home. Neither group is going to have a quarterback, really. I mean, all we've heard so far, Kenny Pickett ain't that great in practice so far for the Steelers. Mitch is Mitch, and Mason Rudolph is still in the running. So that tells you how good the
I really do not believe Mason Rudolph's in the running. I think Pittsburgh media is just saying that because it's training camp. Everybody has a shot.
That wasn't media. That was Chase Claypool and Mike Tomlin.
I'm sorry. They're not serious in saying that. I'm sorry. They're not.
Yeah, I hope not.
They're not. I mean, what? Okay, he hasn't gotten a real opportunity because Ben was there, and Ben didn't really help him out. Let's say that Ben wasn't really that great to him. But come on, you bring. First of all, I think it's Mitch Trubisky's going to be starting. I think more. It's, Kenny Pickett may play at some point, but it's going to be Mitch Trubisky week 1, and probably in that game against the Browns too. But
probably.
Do you have anything else you're going to say? I don't want to cut you off there.
No, go.
The Browns part of it. Look, coming out of that week 6, that schedule's looking pretty tough. Like you said, at the Ravens, home against the Bengals. We'll see what the Bengals are this year after coming off last year, a big year. On paper, they should be probably the same, but we'll see. Dolphins are improved. Bills, they got to go to the Bills. Then home against the Bucs. That's hard after that with coming back with a guy that misses 6 games. And even in training camp, this even goes for what you said about Baker too, because I saw some clips of him in Panthers training camp. I try to take what happened in training camp with a grain of salt because you're pricing against each other. A lot of these guys are in new systems. And that's the thing. When he comes back week 7 against Baltimore, I know you have timing in training camp, but like I just said, that's training camp. You have time to work on things, but that's not real time to work and get things together, like route running, chemistry with the receivers. Play. I know he's learning the system in the offseason, but you have to get that in game time to actually be effective in it. So, to me, coming back in that, especially in that tough of a schedule, coming after his suspension, that's going to be that's a real tough spot. I think those 6 games they could fare pretty well. Maybe go 500. I know there was a comment that put it the Browns having to go 3-3. I think that's probably more so best case. I think maybe they can go 4-2, but we'll see. I'm not putting that out the window, but I think go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, when you look at these first 6 games, I want to keep it here just for a second.
Yeah.
I think it's a coin flip in those first 2 games. So I'll go 1-1 to start the season. Steelers, I might, I don't know where to go with that Steelers game. That's maybe one of the biggest question marks for the Browns is who's going to come in last in the AFC North, Cleveland or Pittsburgh. I think it's still one of the biggest questions. Because Cincy and the Ravens should be battling it out for first. We'll see what happens with Cleveland, especially once Watson gets in there. But if Jacoby Brissett kind of lives up to the feeling, I think he will. Brown should be 2-1 in those first 3 weeks. Then they're going up against the Falcons, who are going to be, they're in rebuild mode. Let's face it. Atlanta's in a rebuild stage. They got some good pieces. They're not too far off. They should be right in that category of they need another year or 2 to get it. They might have a good season, but it's not a real good season for them. So I'm going 3-1. And then I think you look at the next 2, Chargers and Patriots. The upside, Browns playing at home, so they're going to have some home field advantage. But Justin Herbert right now is already in discussions for potentially MVP candidate this year. Chargers, I believe, are favored to win their division. And I know I love this Chargers team. They're a really good bunch of players, and they got some real underrated talents over there too. I mean, I think when you kind of look at that group, you see a lot of players over there, and you're like, yeah, they're fine. But when that group gets going, boy, they're fun to watch. Then you got the Patriots October 16th, that final game without Watson, and it's a winnable game for Cleveland, especially because I don't know what the Patriots. I don't know what the Patriots are, and I don't think we ever know what the Patriots are until the season starts.
And Bill Belichick's doing everything. They still don't have coordinators to this date,
right,
on either side. So we'll see how that does with Mac Jones, because he had what's his face last year, the guy that went to the Raiders. What's his name? McDaniels. No, McDaniels. So I mean, he was used to him his rookie year. Now, second year, you have a whole pretty much. It's not gonna be too different, but now you have a different voice giving you playing calls. So we'll see how that goes with them. But
you would hope by week 6 of the season. I mean, you're gonna have 3 preseason games to get the offense into a rhythm, and then you have 6 weeks of the regular season before you get to this Cleveland Browns game. So I think by this point, the system's going to be in place. And I think when we come back to talk about this game on, October 14th, that Friday, or the 13th, that Thursday, whatever it ends up being, I think we're going to be looking at this game, and we're going to know who's going to win it when it comes down to it, because the Patriots are going to be good, the Browns are going to suck, or both teams are going to suck, or both teams are doing okay. I think both these teams have huge question marks going into the season, but by week 5, week 6, we're going to know what they're made of.
And I think you brought this up at some point in the last couple of weeks when we were talking about the Watson stuff. I'm sorry, if it's me, I know you're giving him fully guaranteed money. He's a guy you brought in to play over Baker. But if they're doing decently well by that Ravens game, I think I roll with Brissett and see what happens. I really do. because, like I said, that's a tough part of your schedule coming up with starting with the Ravens, Bengals, Dolphins, Bills, and Bucks. Like I said, that's a tough spot to bring in a new quarterback. I don't care if it's Deshaun Watson or who it is or how good this person is. That's still tough to do coming in that middle of a season after 6 games. You haven't even played with the team yet. And this is a
Can
team
we talk
that
about the 5 games that he's going to be starting in as well, Deshaun Watson? I mean, we mentioned the Ravens, we mentioned the Bengals, but then he's going down to Miami to take on the Dolphins, going into Buffalo to take on the Bills, and then we're taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home. That might be the hardest 5-game stretch in the Cleveland Browns schedule. I mean, let's go farther. You can extend that to the 2 games prior to Deshaun Watson, that this 7-game stretch from the Chargers, Patriots, Ravens, Bengals, Dolphins, Bills, Buccaneers is one of the hardest stretches of the entire season for any team.
Well, and I know you talked about the players they have, which on paper, we even said this last year, on paper with on both sides of the ball, Garrett, bringing in Amari Cooper, both running backs, but that didn't do much. I know they have Baker, different quarterback, but a lot of those guys were there last year, and it didn't work out. And if you're talking about a team that
always finds a way to get himself injured too, so
exactly, and that part of the ball in the secondary sometimes they tend to struggle. So if it's me and you're doing decently well by that time his suspension is lifted, I think I still ride it out and see at least through the first couple games of that stretch, because you're talking about a team that Deshaun Watson does not have game chemistry with. You talk about training camp practice all you want, it's different in games. He doesn't have that with that team. And I know they're good enough to on paper, like I said, but the Browns, this being a fan, even with a good roster, loaded roster the last couple of years, they find a way to lose games.
Yep.
I think I still ride it out and see what happens.
Well, here's my thought on that. I'm of the same opinion to an extent. I think that Ravens game, if the Browns come in 4-2, I keep Brissett as a starter unless he has looked bad. Because the Browns can go 4-2 on the run game alone.
Yeah, exactly.
The passing game is going to be a question mark. If the passing game looks good going into that matchup against the Ravens, and here's why I say Brissett should be the starter in that game if he's looking good and the Browns are 4-2. In that scenario, I don't want the first game of my new mega million multi-year quarterback that's come in with tons of controversy to be on the road against the Super Bowl favorite.
Yeah.
I don't want that. That is setting a man up for failure, and that's exactly what Cleveland's going to do, too. They're going to jump on putting him in there as soon as they can because they want him in there, and that makes sense. You're paying this guy a lot of freaking money to be your quarterback, and you really are testing the waters of what the NFL is willing to do with all of the other stuff about it. Browns took a huge risk here. They're not going to sit back. It doesn't matter if Brissett's got this team rolling to 6-0. It was just like Teddy Bridgewater had the New Orleans Saints rolling while Drew Brees was out. They weren't going to leave Teddy Bridgewater in once Brees was ready to go. This is the same thing here. Watson not a Hall of Fame quarterback, but Brissett is a placeholder. As soon as that place is ready to be filled, Deshaun Watson's going to step into that. But I don't think he should in that October 23rd game against the Ravens because that is setting him up for failure. But we know that's what the Browns love to do with a quarterback anyway. So, I'm with you. I think they should find a better place to put him. And I really think it should be Halloween. Primetime game against the Bengals. Put your superstar on primetime TV. See what happens. I think that's the game to start him in front of the home crowd. That's what I was going to say. Deshaun Watson's game 1. Put him in some reps in that Ravens game, especially if it gets out of hand and the Browns are getting absolutely dogged on. Yeah, put him in. Get some game time reps for this guy, but don't give him the start go. Don't give him that spotlight on the road against a divisional favorite and a potential Super Bowl favorite as well.
Because, like you said, and again, when you're starting a season with the quarterback suspended, and you have a backup that's been decent, but has also had some bad times in the league, in Brissett, he's good enough. Like you said, if their running game, it's on paper, it could win them about half the games that he's going to miss. But there's a good chance that they could be 4-2. There's a good chance they could be 2-4. There's a good chance they could be 500. I'm not trying to throw in the fact that it's a Browns.
There's a chance they can be 0-5. Let's be honest here. This is Cleveland.
Could be.
There's a chance they're 0-5.
I'm not trying to use the argument that it's the Browns because I guess it's going to sound that way, but it's a
fair argument.
There's a lot of times that they lose games that they should win, and I think some teams you could say that too about. But they do lose games that they should win. I'm even looking at after that tough stretch with the Ravens, Bengals, Dolphins, Bills, and Bucks. They go down to Houston. On paper, they should win that game every day. But let's not forget Deshaun Watson played there.
Can we just say the kind of the irony of it? The Browns are playing in Houston on December 4th.
Yeah.
Which I think is funny that Deshaun Watson wears 4th. They're playing there on the 4th in his old stadium. We'll see what goes on. I think that should be a fun game to see. I mean, he should rip apart that team.
Well, he should, but
and
a lot of times we hear to say teams should do this and they don't.
Right. So we'll see what ends up being the Texans this year. They still feel like they're in tank mode. So, but even still, Deshaun Watson is not going to be set up for success this season with Cleveland because the best games for him to play are the 6 that he's out. The biggest thing maybe out of the suspension, how it impacts the football side of things is the Browns were looking at this schedule, a real chance. I mean, in those first few weeks to go 4-2, and then you can kind of bounce around on 500 through these harder games. You might end up a little below afterwards. But once you get past the Buccaneers to get into that Texans game, schedule that as a win. But then you got to get right back to work against the Bengals, and then against the Ravens, and then against the Saints. And then you got to go into Washington, which it's Washington. It's going to be January. It's going to be freezing cold, and we'll see what ends up being the case there. But that's a hard game. And then you finish out the year January 8th in Pittsburgh. This schedule for the Browns, I think you very realistically look at this, even with Deshaun Watson, it might be a losing season.
I was going to say that. Yeah, I think even with Watson, if he wasn't suspended, I think it's still a tough schedule all around.
Yeah, I think when you look all around at the schedule, I mean, you're playing, 6-7 teams that are all in the running for, divisional titles in Chargers, Patriots, Ravens, Bengals, Buccaneers, Bills, Saints.
Yeah, throw Saints back in there.
Those are just the obvious ones. I didn't mention the Steelers. Washington could very potentially win the NFC East with Carson Wentz. We don't know what they're going to end up being. Yeah, you got to mention Carson Wentz is their quarterback there now. So he's had up and downs, but when Carson Wentz is having an up season, I think it's hard to deny that he's not one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL when he's playing good, which you don't always see consistency.
Which isn't often, yeah.
But when he plays good, he's one of those best quarterbacks to have out there. That's why Washington brought him in, because when he is up, he is up.
Yeah.
But I mean, you look at the easy games for Cleveland: Panthers, Jets, Falcons, and Texans. They really have 4 easy games on a 17-game schedule. 4-13 is not out of the window for this season.
It's not, but
they could also completely turn that on its head and go 13-4.
Yeah,
the Browns continue to remain the biggest question mark in the NFL.
They're the most interesting team the last couple of years.
Right.
I think that's a good way to put it. They're the most interesting.
I just don't think you can predict what Cleveland's going to do, because I don't think they know what they're going to do.
You can't predict it, and you can't trust it, because I just want to see how this year plays out. Even next year, if Watson has the full year, which he should. This year, I know there's going to be parts starting out the year he's not going to play. We'll see what game they bring him back in. But it's just Cleveland hasn't had a guy like that. And I feel like every time they get a talented guy, even when Baker first started, we thought he was going to be the guy. We all thought it looked like he was going to be the guy. He came against that Jets game, lit it up. He had a good rookie year to finish out. It just seems like every time they have something, again, I'm not trying to throw the big narrative that the Browns mess up, but they do a lot when they have good, talented players. I'm being real. It's not like I'm making that up. It's evidence of that.
I'm right there.
When they get guys, and they not even guys that are currently on the roster with Myles Garrett. Not that he's done anything wrong, but they're not winning with these guys. And on paper, like you said, they should be competing with the Ravens and Bengals every year. But especially with this year, whenever Deshaun Watson comes back,
they were in the conversation.
I know
the final 3 weeks of the season last year. So let's not say that they're not winning games with these people. They are. Just there were some clear deficiencies in the passing game and play calling. I'm going to put on play calling a lot too.
Oh, I do too, for sure. I think we beat a dead horse with that last year, but I think they were in the conversation this year or last year, but it wasn't record-wise. They shouldn't have been in that position. They shouldn't have been in a position where they were on 2 games under 500 against Pittsburgh in the second to last week. On paper, they haven't had a superstar player like Deshaun Watson in a long time. I just want to see how they manage this, because a lot of Cleveland teams, even outside the Browns, they find ways to screw up when they have superstars. I hope I'm wrong. I want to see what happens. I want to see they don't have this opportunity often. I want to see what they do with it. But that's also something else to keep in mind.
I don't think that there's many people in the NFL and fans of football in general that wouldn't be okay with Cleveland winning a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. However it becomes that way, and whoever's the quarterback when it happens, I don't think there's a single NFL fan that would be mad to see Cleveland finally win a title. When you talk about most deserving fan bases for one, how can you not put Cleveland into that conversation? They have been very patient with their team for a long time to win a title. It's a group that has never won one. Technically, they're an expansion team, and one of the most recent ones at that. And, they have a storied history. They won the very last championship before it became the Super Bowl back in, 1964?
Then the Super Bowl started in 66. So 1 year.
Yeah, so 64 or 65. It was right in there. They won that final one. But, Mike, as a Cowboys fan, I know obviously your number one pick is to see the Cowboys win it. But how would you feel to see Cleveland winning a Super Bowl or playing in a Super Bowl?
I really wouldn't care. Whatever happens, happens. I'm not rooting against it, but I am a Cowboy fan. If I'm not a Cowboy fan, I root for Pittsburgh, so it's not like I love it, but it's just whatever.
Fair. I don't think people would love it, but I think when you look around and you go, what team would I actually want to win a Super Bowl outside of my own? I think Cleveland's on a short list for a lot of people to see that. To witness sports history as a sports guy, removing myself from being a Browns fan, to see that history be made, I think would be the most special part about that too.
Well, I think outside of my team, again, they're most deserving. No question. They're most deserving after everything they've gone through. Losing a team, having one come back, I didn't have a team for 3 years, so I wouldn't say.
Not to mention, during that 3-year span, the team that got sent to Baltimore won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and then they won another one a couple years later. But right. I wouldn't say that if it wasn't my team, I wouldn't say that's a team I'd probably want to win, because I'd like to see the Bills win something. Like I said, if I'm not a Cowboy fan, I root for the Steelers. So
they had their chances, though. That's the thing. The Bills had their chances, and they flopped them on their own.
They have. But I'm just saying, there's teams. Like I said, I wouldn't care what Cleveland does if it happened. Whatever, I can't control anything. But I wouldn't say that they're definitely the most deserving, probably. But they're not the team I would say, if it's not my team, I want that team. If it makes sense.
Fair enough. All right, let's get out of the NFL. We'll get into it more in 3 days when the Hall of Fame game comes up. That's what we're going to be getting into. But Mike, trade deadline is tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And we've already had a couple big moves. First one, Mike, Josh Hader getting moved from the Brewers, sent to the Padres, an all-star level closer. Mike, why was this trade made?
I have no idea. The Brewers do weird things sometimes. They kind of operate like the Rays. They make questionable things. You just came out of nowhere, too. And this came on literally 10 minutes before the show. I texted you, we got to talk about this, because I wouldn't say, okay, the return I don't think is that bad. You talk about two guys that have had Major League experience, Taylor Rogers and I forgot to say his first name, Dinelson Lamet. That's his last name, Lamet, but I don't know how to say his first name. He's been a pitcher for them for a couple years. Then two prospects with Robert Gasser and the guy with the last name of Ruiz. It's not a bad return, but you're talking about Josh Hader when this is a team that's winning their division right now. And this is a guy that's been the best closer, at least one of the best relievers in the game the last couple of years. Came out of nowhere. It really did. I don't really. If you're asking me to explain it, I really don't. I really can't, because it came out of nowhere. This is not a name you heard, and it's more. This deadline's been more talked about as every other deadline is too as well. First, the market for starting pitchers. Even the trade we saw over the weekend with Luis Castillo, I think that's going to set the bar too for a lot of trades. Even starting pitchers, I think for some other guys that could be dealt as well, because that was a big return that the Mariners sent back to the Reds. So we'll see what that does for returns. But with this Josh Hader trade here, it's a blockbuster that did not see coming at all. I think shocked a lot of people.
Yeah, and last time we've seen a move like this came 2014. Yoenis Cespedes was traded from the first place A's, sent to the Red Sox. Red Sox that season, that was one of their worst ones. They finished 71-91, and the Oakland Athletics found a wild card spot at 88-74. So it kind of backfired last time. They were first place teams, and they fell 10 games back to the Anaheim Angels. So we'll see how this turns out for Milwaukee. I find this very highly questionable, especially when I think you look at this as Milwaukee, fair to say, I think is a small market team. They're growing. They might be closer to a mid-market, especially with the success of the Milwaukee Bucks and what's been going on there in professional sports for them. The city, I think, is starting to grow into a larger sports market, but I think it's still in the same level of, a small to medium market team. It's not major, but they found so much success recently that I find it questionable that they're going to throw out one of their big pieces. This would have been like San Antonio trading away Tony Parker in the height of his power. It's like the small market team sending out one of their top guys that, they've been, handcrafting for a couple of years, especially when the margin right now is very tight between Milwaukee and St. Louis for first place in that NL Central. And I don't know, if you don't win the Central, I don't think you're going to find yourself a wild card spot this season. There isn't a lot of space because San Diego and San Francisco are still in that hunt for the wild card spot. Then you have Philadelphia, you have Atlanta. Both of those teams are looking hot on the hunt for the National League. So I guess maybe the one thing I'm seeing out of this is Josh Hader's not having a great season on the mound. He has 59 strikeouts and 29 saves in 34 innings pitched, but he's also put together an ERA of over 4. And I know it doesn't really have, a lot of time to go out there and find a rhythm, but when you're going for a closer, especially at his level, and you look at his stats per year, this is a terrible year. And I think maybe this is a jump from Milwaukee to capitalize on the name value that he still has in order to get that high return rather than waiting till the end of the year and his, ERA's up over 5. They've blown their spot at a playoff opportunity. I think this is one of those moves early in the year for Milwaukee in preparation for Hader kind of being at the end of his run as one of those top level pitchers, because in the 5 years prior he's been for the Brewers, the highest he's ever had for an ERA was 3.79. He's coming off of a season in which his ERA was 1.23. Now, his save numbers are up a ton this season. He's got 29 saves, and we're only halfway through the year. And especially when you compare that to last year, when he only had 34. The year before that, he only had 13, 37 the year before that. So he's on pace for more saves, but my only thing, I think Milwaukee's seeing the bigger picture. They're not looking at this, we lost a big player. They sold a big player for a lot of talent and raw talent. I mean, they're picking up a number 7 prospect coming in. So I think there's definitely question marks on why a team contending like this makes the move. But I also think they've been contending.
Well, I think too.
What is one small move like this going to do to a team that has been on the top of the mountain, especially here in the Central for the last couple of seasons? And they have great players all around. I think this is a buy-in for the future of this team so that they can continue to contend instead of getting stagnant, having players get old, and then those numbers slowly start to dwindle and they get left in the past like we saw with Chicago and the Cubs and how they completely fell off after their World Series runs.
I think you're in a spot too with them. Like you said, they're National League Central, of course. Yeah, they're contending, but I think they're looking at a spot where, last year they had a great year. They've had a great couple of years, the last couple of years, and they haven't really done much in the playoffs. I know they made the NLCS one year, but they haven't really done anything since then. So I think they're probably looking at a spot where we're still going to be good, but let's make a type of trade where we could still bring in a bunch of young guys and still kind of flip them into being, important pieces that we still try to be competitive. Because Taylor Rogers, if you're going to acquire him, that's one of the guys in this deal, you're going to put in the bullpen. The thing, I don't think it's a terrible idea because, with Josh Hader, you just ran through his numbers this year. In 37 appearances, I just had it pulled up. Yeah, in 37 appearances, you mentioned the 4.24 ERA. It's not great for him. And then, he had a 4.92 strikeout to walk ratio, which also was, for his standards, not great. But even with that, he still has a career ERA of 2.48 coming out of the bullpen. So I think you're looking at a spot where the Brewers, their bullpen's still pretty solid. It's not great, but it's still pretty solid. You can add Taylor Rogers in there. I just don't know who the closer is going to be now. Maybe Devin Williams, possibly. I mean, they still have solid arms with him and Brad Boxberger and Brent Suter, who I liked for a long time. Trevor Gotts had a good year. They still have a solid bullpen to be in the playoffs. But I think, in the playoffs, especially, we've seen the last couple of years, guys pitch out of roles. We've seen closers come in the eighth inning trying to get 5-6 out saves. That's probably going to be where the Brewers are, because I don't think they have a closer type of guy like they have with Josh Hader. But overall, I think, it was a shocking deal. It was surprising because you didn't hear his name in any type of guys that were available, any mock trades or whatever you want to call it. Is a return good or bad? I think it's pretty average for the way he's pitched this year.
I would say for the way he's pitched this year, it's a really good return. I think it's a good buy for both sides, because San Diego, I think they're in need of a guy that can come into that spot. They're trying to lock up second place right now in the NL West. They want to take that spot away from San Francisco. They want to guarantee themselves that wild card spot in second place behind the Dodgers, because I think right now taking the West, I think, is out of the reach. They're 12 games back, half the season to go. They need a huge run to close back in, and I don't see the Dodgers losing enough for a run by San Diego to really matter. So now it becomes a wild card hunt. They have a wild card spot at the moment. They're 1.5 games ahead of the team behind them for that wild card spot. So they're looking for a move this year. They're looking for a now type of move. And acquiring Josh Hader is just that. They need a guy that when they get into that postseason, they get to those close games, they can bring in to make a save. And I think what San Diego's looking at is, the ERA is high, but if we're giving this guy 2-run games instead of 1-run games, which we know San Diego can do because they can hit the ball very well and maybe even a little bit better than the Brewers at times, then they're going to be able to put this guy in even with the high ERA. Because keep in mind, if he's only going in 1 inning and you allow 1 run in that inning, he's putting together an ERA of 9. So he's letting up 1 run every other appearance. I don't think it's kind of an overreaction to look at that ERA and go, oh, he's washed. I know I just kind of was, but I think you got to leave that perspective. That's what San Diego's looking at. It's like, this is a one inning type of guy. You can sometimes, when you look at 1 inning type of guys, throw those ERAs out and look at strikeouts, saves, and walks. What is he doing? What's his situational game? And I think that's what San Diego's looking at. Well, Milwaukee's looking at that ERA. They're trying to clean up their pitching department, because Milwaukee, they are having some pitching struggles this year. I mean, they've allowed 434 runs. They've only put up 474 on the counter of that. When you look at other teams that are putting up 474 runs, you look at the Mets, 475 runs, but 377 runs against. Houston's in a similar boat. 461s run scored, 346 against. Milwaukee's trying to put their pitching on par with the rest of the Major League Baseball leaders, divisional leaders, because you look at those other leaders, and the Yankees, 344 runs allowed. Right now, they're the clear favorite to win the World Series because of how great their pitching is. When you look at baseball right now, the best teams have the best pitching. That's what Milwaukee's trying to make this move for. They're trying to clean up this bullpen, bring in some young guys. You're seeing how great young players are doing right now in baseball, which I think is another reason why they're making these moves to get some old out and bring some youth in, is we're seeing a huge youth influx in baseball. I think they're trying to capitalize on it, kind of being one of those first divisional leaders to capitalize on the young talent in baseball.
And I think you're looking at a deal where you're looking at a deal where they're getting, it's a 2-part thing, because they're getting 2 guys that they can plug in right away, and 2 guys that they can kind of stash away that are near MLB level, but still have, it's a little bit work to do on the minors. And I think on the Padres side of things, though, getting a guy with Josh Hader, I think you still got to be pretty happy, because they could be probably sitting in a position where, and I think it's a problem with a lot of teams with their closers now, because not even just it's kind of stemmed away from the playoffs now into the regular season, where you're trying to use guys for 8 and 9 innings and try to get 5 out saves, like I said, an extra out in the previous inning. I think that's kind of not good for a guy like Josh Hader. I think the Padres could probably try to use him in a spot where they just bring him in the 9th, or if the playoff game they want to get it locked up early, bring him in the 8th and have him do 1 inning. because I think that's more his game. I think that's where he's more electric, when he just has a straight, narrow window to, like you said, 1 or 2 runs lead. That's where he's good at when he comes into those situations to just get 3 outs. And I think with the Padres, you got to be pretty happy because you got him in the back of your bullpen now. They just locked up Joe Musgrove, their starter, for 5 years, I think $100 million. So they're going all in because they the last couple of years, they brought in all these big name stars. They're finally starting to put it together this year. I think they want to capitalize on it. And I think even what we said about Josh Hader this year, it's not been his best year from his standards. It's still a really good pickup for the Padres.
Yeah, no, I'm right there on it. But, Mike, some of the other names getting tossed around. It was Shohei Ohtani for a little bit, but Los Angeles has now said they will not be looking to move Shohei Ohtani before the trade deadline. They will at least keep him for the rest of the year. So it kind of leaves Juan Soto left as the big name out there, kind of on the market that we've heard of, which I'm kind of surprised Atlanta's looking to sell at this point. I mean, they're a 62-41 team. They've had good pitching, good hitting. Pitching could be better, but they're ahead of their expected win-loss record based off run scores and runs allowed, which puts them at only a 60-43 team. They're 500 against teams over 500. I think right now Atlanta's in a good spot. Mike, do you have any inclination why they're looking to move Soto?
I'm sorry, the Braves?
Yeah.
Not really. To be honest, I think they're still in a really good position to. If I'm the Braves, I'd probably stay put. And I think I was talking to Matt against the other day. I know it's in the past now with Benintendi getting moved. That would have been a really good pick for the Braves, I think. To get another outfielder, even if they have a chance to get Soto's here still, because I know they're one of the teams that's still in conversation. They need that because we saw what happened last year. They got 3 outfielders at deadline, hoping one would stick. They all stuck, and they won a World Series. To me, I think they're in the same position where their outfield ranks. I forget what stat it was, like I said the other day, but it was a stat that I saw. It ranks their outfield ranks bottom 5 in the league.
Mike, I'm an idiot. Juan Soto's with the Nationals, not the Braves.
Oh. Yeah, well, I know, but I saw you talk about the Braves, so I was talking about their side of things. But
Nationals definitely looking to move Soto, and they can get a huge return for this.
I'll flip it though with them, and I think I even said this last week. I don't know if you were on or not, but
I missed most of last week moving.
There was a good point brought up. I think it was by I forget what writer it was from ESPN, but you're looking at a part where the Nationals owner wants to sell the team. Do they want to try to get this done now and not leave the new owner with a big tied up mess with Juan Soto, or do they want to try to get this done right away or hold it off for the next management? I don't know. I think it's a really good chance he gets moved to the deadline, but I wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't because there's 2 days left. Actually, I think it's tomorrow, the deadline. So they have 24 hours
tomorrow
left.
at 6 p.m. We're coming down to
so we're close to
27 hours.
So again, you say this to every star player. We said it with Kevin Durant in the NBA. If you don't get exactly what you need, there's no reason to trade him.
That is real.
This team's going nowhere. The Josh Bell's probably going to get moved. Some other pieces they have are probably going to get moved. Again, I know he's going to end up being there, being miserable. But hey, if you want to get out, I got to find the right deal for you. You're 23 years old. You're one of the most electric players in the game. If I don't get the right thing, you got to stay here. To me, and I think that's a good attitude to have.
Yeah, Mark Feinsand, MLB executive reporter, put this comment out there that the Padres added Hader without giving up any of their top 6 prospects, only 1 out of their top 20. He still has the Padres in the running for a potential move for Juan Soto with how much they have left in their farm system. They got loads of prospects to give up here. Picks as well can be thrown into that move. And I think when you're looking at a team like the Nationals, I think they are looking to kind of build up their farm system and look to bring in prospects rather than win now type players. They're looking for, hey, let's win in next season, 2 years down the line. Let's build a team for the next couple of years rather than putting something together and trying to make a run here in the late stages. So I think Padres definitely are good running. I heard San Francisco has reemerged as a suitor potentially for this trade. But, Mike, you're right. Unless the Nationals are getting the perfect package that they want with all the guys that they want, they're not saying yes to this deal because they have no need to. People need Soto. All these other teams need Juan Soto. Washington doesn't need to do anything but lose because they're not going to be winning a wild card spot. They're well out of that discussion. They need a monumental run, and that might not even be enough. I think you can give that team 20 wins, and I still don't think that they're in a position that you're really talking about them if they won 20 games from here on out, because at that point they might be on the edge. of looking at a wild card spot, but I think they'd still be too far out of the running. So this is a team that just needs to focus on losing and building their farm system. It's prospect mode now for the Nationals. It's building the youth here, getting them some playing time. Obviously, here in a month, we'll get ready for September call-ups. So you're going to see a lot of prospects get moved onto this Nationals roster in the next month. So they're going to be looking for those prospects and whatever deal comes their way. I do think they try and get this ready to go before new management comes in, because I think if you bring new management in, there might be reluctancy to trade Soto, and that can create a huge tear between, the organization and the player in that situation. That's only going to make the matters worse. So I definitely think this is a move that needs to get done before new management takes over for the Nationals.
You know what? It's going to be
give the new management a fresh start.
I agree, and
unless here's the but. Unless the owner has talked to whoever the next owner is going to be, and that new owner has a completely different idea on how he wants to manage the Juan Soto trade and who he wants to bring in. That's really the only but I think there is with this situation is if there's a plan already kind of in the works on how they're going to handle Soto and how they're going to handle what trade and what comes their way that comes out of it. That's the only reason I don't see him getting traded, but I think this is a clear-cut situation. You got a guy that wants out who can help a team go win now. There's a lot of teams that want to win now that I think are ready to pull the trigger on this trade.
And we'll see what happens with the deadline coming up. Things already started heating up today with Josh Hader. You're talking about teams that want to win now. I know we don't have time here, but I love what the Mariners did getting Castillo. I think they have a really nice team now, and that you need at least one superstar to at least make the playoffs and be a contender. They got one superstar with Julio Rodriguez.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get your guys. And a team like Seattle, they haven't been in a playoff spot in 20 years. This is their time. They're feeling that momentum. They're in a spot where they can make that run. And I think they're running out there with reckless abandon at the moment. They are going. When you talk about a team that's buying, sometimes you never really know what situation a team's 100% in. But if you ever looked out there and you go, I know that team is buying, it's Seattle, because they're looking to finally get back to the promised land. I don't even think World Series is their goal. They're just looking for that playoff spot, and I think they're dangerous.
I think this is the year. I think they end it.
We'll see.
I don't want to jinx it. I want them to get in. I don't want to jinx it, so I'm just
knock on wood here. I'll knock on the baseball bat.
There you go. That's appropriate.
I got it hanging right on top of my desk here.
There you go.
All right, well, we are out of time today on the Casual Sports Podcast. Power Hour coming up next on your sports network. We'll have high school football when it comes starting up, but Power Hour takes from here. I'm Alec Caberna. That's Mike Wolfgang. We'll see Matt Morrison later on this week. See you tomorrow.